Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Geek Centurions. Me, Eli.
Feed Joe.
And we're having another marvelous Marvel time. Questionable if you feel that these two projects that the recent Marvel Cinematic Universe has come out with are good or not, depending on you. We always say that. But we will be talking about the last episode of Miss Marvel along with our review of Thor Love and Thunder. Two projects that I feel had a very strong standing, but kind of had a little bit of a tough thing to go about. I don't know how you feel about those, Joey.
I will say this at least about Miss Marvel. As a whole, it's not a bad show. I think it was solid. It was decent, but it definitely had a bit of a. The first half I think was solid enough, but the second half really sort of takes a bit of a downward spiral bit in terms of pacing. And this last episode doesn't really help matters in trying to bring it back, but I think it ends well enough to where you could probably get a second season out of it. I will say, do you want to talk about Miss Marvel first, or do you want to jump into?
Let's talk about Miss Marvel first.
Okay.
Because I feel like Thor Love and Thunder is going to be the more, talked about one. And we will be going into spoilers with Thor Love and Thunder.
Okay, yeah, alright. Well, we can do that. Alright, so this, episode of Miss Marvel, more or less picks up where we left off with Cameron and Bruno on the run. Kamala has gotten back to, Jersey, and she quickly realizes, hey, Bruno's in trouble. I gotta go find him. Her mom, though, she explains the situation to the rest of her family, even though, your mom already told us everything. Sorry, but she makes her new and improved Miss Marvel outfit, which is nice to see.
Nice to see. I like that idea. It was made by her mother. It's a very Superman thing to do.
Yeah. But yeah, no, she just starts to cruise around the city trying to find them. They do find a bit of sanctuary at the mosque with Najee or whatever. They help him out because obviously damage control is more or less like this lady's very persistent.
Oh, she is very persistent.
Although I do like as soon as she enters the mosque, like everybody IDs, and I was like, oh wow, okay, you guys already had it out before you even got here. Okay, all right. It's like we've been through this before, ma'am.
Gee, that tells you a lot. Just Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, but no, they help him make sure to get out. Kamala finds them, and they head to the school because they feel like it's probably the safest place they can go. But damage control still finds them. And they sort of plan an escape route because Kamala's like, okay, I think the red daggers can help you out. You got to get Kamran to the pier, but we need a distraction to get him there.
Yeah. Plug this in real quick. Second slot. Yeah, and from there, that's where they start basically going into the plan of how to get Kamran out of there. And this is also where, sadly, I feel like the pacing is showing itself again, and the rushness of the show is really taking root. Where they have a plan, they all meet up at the school, and then all of a sudden, a lot of people start showing up randomly.
Because Zoe, the influencer girl from earlier in the season, shows up randomly, more or less out of nowhere, to be like, "Hey, don't worry, come on, I'll help too." It's like, what? How the hell are you here? Oh, I use the theater room for like my TikToks and stuff. It's like, well, and now it goes like, wait, so you knew the entire time? It's like, yeah, more or less. It's like
bullshit.
It's like, you saved my life. Come on, I'll help you out. It's like. And they get a little scene as they're planning of so you knew the entire time but you didn't tell anyone. That's an added character for you, Literally, that's what that's not exactly what a character says, but that's basically what they're saying. It's like, yeah, but I want Kamal to tell the world that she's a superhero when she's ready. You know, it's like I don't know. It's definitely a different. It's a departure from the character, honestly.
Yeah, it's well, especially since like it feels like we didn't really need her to be there. And if you wanted her to be there, I feel like there was probably better methods to do it.
Yeah, because yeah, it definitely feels like there probably could have been better ways of pulling, like trying to explain how she got there and all that stuff. Like honestly, like her role in the whole plan is more or less to get on social media and be like, "Hey, my friends are superheroes, and we're all trapped at the school, and Damage Control wants and you need to tell Damage Control to stand down because they're being very mean guys, you know." And yeah, like I feel like there's probably a better way of like getting her to that point in the logic of the story, but to just have her just randomly show up and just try to hand wave it.
Yeah,
it's a little annoying. At least with the other character that shows up, Kamala's brother. At least there's at least a bit of it, a decent excuse.
it's like I just sneaked in.
Yeah, I sneaked in. You know, I used to go to school here too, guys. All right, I know my ways of getting here.
Yeah, I know my ways to get in and out.
Yeah, and you know he's like, "Oh yeah, mom told me to keep watch on you." You know, it's like, superheroes don't need chaperones. You know, classic brother sister dynamic.
Yeah.
Like
that I was okay with that.
Yeah, that one is like more or less fine because logical explanation and you know like a logical like at least
reasoning to be there.
You know. But yeah, they do this whole like wacky everybody disguises themselves as Kamran and go run around school, letting Damage Control run around. But Kamran is having issues with his powers.
That's right, because he does have powers. He did receive powers.
Yep, and he also is at least a little bit emotionally out of sync because he's sort of like questioning Kamal, like, "Yo, what happened with my mom? All right, why are you taking me to the Red Daggers? They hated our people. What happened to my mom?" And Kamal has to explain, "Yeah, your mom died, you know," and that kind of pisses Kamran off.
Understandable, yes.
Yeah.
But it's also very quick.
Yeah, it's also like it's almost like he also has the problem with his mom where he's about to turn a bit super villainy because he starts attacking Damage Control, and it looks like, you know, Kamal is trying to protect the Damage Control people from not getting seriously hurt.
Yeah,
because it definitely seems like he's willing to like kill some of these guys. And she's like, "No, we can't kill. Killing's not the right way, Kamran." So they have like these bits back and forth, but it's still just Kamran wanting to escape more than anything. And you know, soon there's like a crowd of people outside being like, "Yo, you know, you gotta leave Kamala and, you know, them alone. You know, they're just kids." And like, you know, the main Damage Control guy gets on the phone. And it's like, "Hey, we're getting some bad press. I need you to stand down at least, you know, because you know this isn't looking good for us."
No, and it goes back to what you said. I feel like they needed to really flesh out the Damage Control thing.
Yeah, because we get a decent chunk of like characterization for them for like maybe the first two episodes, but then obviously that gets dropped for the clandestine plot line and having them be more or less the bad guys of the story. But because of what happened in the last episode, you know, you're having the wrap up super tight. Like now it leaves Damage Control, and they're not as, you know, they weren't developed at, you know, I think they were developed kind of worse than the clandestines. But yeah, at least like Damage Control has a bit of a more interesting motivation because they're more like,
because you could be, because the main villain, right? The main villain, but the main lady clearly, you know, has an issue with people with superpowers, and really much of like really quick to blame on people of minorities, right? Which sets that in of itself, but also you can kind of see why people who aren't that would be concerned, right? It's someone with powers. We gotta, you know, keep these people, you know, in check. But it's also so very, you know, weirdly structured.
Yeah.
And like, there's no real reasoning for that. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough.
No, I think probably more than anything, it's like there's a hint of like a decent motivation because she has like this whole like, these are the wrong people getting these are wrong people getting powers. Like they're teenagers or something like that. Like they're irresponsible. They can't handle these powers. Something to that effect. But like, I feel like if they had fleshed it out more, they could have been more interesting. Because it seems damage control is more like a neutral kind of evil. If we were to like align it in like a kind of thing where like they're really only evil because they want to maintain order, and they have to do these bad things. Like in No Way Home, like they're more or less on Peter Parker because like one, the damage he caused, and two,
That's not to say that this lady being possibly racist.
I mean, there's definitely an undertone. I would say there's definitely does seem to be like a bit of that, especially how she interacts with like the people at the mosque and stuff. Yeah, but like like you could probably have like done something a bit with that, but again, it feels like they just didn't have like I don't know, they didn't
have time to flesh things out.
Yeah, they didn't have time to flesh like at least damage control out a little bit, or they felt like they weren't as interesting. But the de facto them into being just the final villains of the episode or the series, like you gotta like at least give them more development.
Yeah, I know, I agree with that. And like, to go back to the main plot, there's now a fight between both Kamala and Kamran, because he's upset, he's angry, he's about to hurt everybody, and Kamala is still being trying to be a hero, tries to save everyone, and they do it in a very interesting way, where she is able to do her not visually what she does in the comics. She says the embiggen line, which is really weird for me.
Yeah, because like one of her things as well, because in the comics, like she stretch her body or whatever, she can do a thing where she gets kind of big.
Yeah.
And she does like I'm embiggen,
yeah,
like that's her thing.
Like if you've seen the games, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, but in this case, like it's not like it's kind of weird for her to just say the line. Like almost like saying the lines like, "Oh, she said the thing." Yeah. It feels like it's supposed to be meant to be like that moment, but we never like see her like even think about like doing something like that before.
It's like you know what it is. It's like how in Amazing Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
They teeter the line of saying, "With great power comes great responsibility."
Yeah, in the first movie, like, or like they don't say the line, but they say a version of the line.
Yeah, but it also feels really weird and like out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's like that. Well, like the Raimi Spider-Man movie and in No Way Home, those lines make sense to the context of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, I'm comparing like a thing she says to like. The famous line of "great power, great responsibility." There is no reason for her to say that, right? Is what I'm trying to like get at.
Yeah, like I mean, I agree with you. Like, there's no like I said, like there was never like a moment where she thought about like, hey, what if I could turn myself big, and tries to do it, and like or like something like that, where like there's no setup for it. She just says, "embiggen," and then she gets the big. Like. It almost reminds like it's like if they would botch like it's like if you were like it's like if you had a Hulk movie and Bruce Banner says Hulk smash and then he turns into the Hulk kind of thing.
Yeah, that doesn't feel right.
That doesn't feel right. Usually, no. Like
Hulk says Hulk smash.
Yeah, Hulk says Hulk smash.
Puny Banner say nothing.
Yeah, Puny Banner just goes, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like they try to make the embiggen line like her catchphrase, like her superhero catchphrase, but it doesn't really work because there's no setup to it. But yeah, now she gets big. She does a bunch of stuff. She saves the crowd, from like the collateral damage. But yeah, like it sort of comes to a head. Like eventually, like Kamran just starts emanating all this power and it's like spreading everywhere. Kamala tries to like pretty much give him like pretty much tries to stop him, and he's sort of just like, all my mother wanted to do was protect, like wanted to get back home, and and I think I have to do the same because I can't be accepted here. There's no way for me to go back to normal. And she's like, there is no normal. All right, we just gotta live with what we got. Your mom your mom sacrificed herself to save you, to protect you, and so.
And I think that's the issue I have with Kamran's character arc right now, because it was never like he wasn't already accepted. But it's like, there was never a moment where his powers made him feel unaccepted, right?
Yeah, because I think, for me, like, he just, like, I think he kind of got the short end of the stick when it came to a bit of character development. Like, he has his family, his mom abandoned him because she's so hell-bent on, like, getting back home. Like, I'm more or less surprised he isn't upset about that more than anything.
Yeah.
But he still has this, like, oh, my mother loved me or whatever, like, kind of thing.
I think it would make more sense is, like, my mother's gone, everyone I know is gone, what's the point?
Yeah, like, what's the point of me, like, doing all these things? Like, I should just, like, maybe go in, like, a bit of, like, a weird revenge kind of thing. It's like...
I wouldn't say revenge, but more like... I have no one left.
I just wanted to. I want to watch the world burn, right?
I wouldn't say I'm not going world burn, but more like, why don't I just like give myself up? It's what's the point? Like more of a depressing route, not like I'm angry, I want revenge on the world kind of shit.
Well, I mean, I only say that because they definitely want him to like be a bit aggressive and like take all his frustrations out on damage control and stuff. Like, if he was, like, super depressed about it, then obviously, like, he's just like, screw it, just take me in, I don't care. Whatever. Like, I don't know. But, yeah, no, Kamala's, like, convinces him to, like, calm down, go to, like, gives him the escape route. And when he escapes, like, everybody's like, yeah, Kamala, you did it. And then, like, damage control comes in, they're like, take her in, and, like, everybody just,
I like that scene. That was a good scene.
Like, everybody, like, comes in, like, sort of protects her. Even, like, the cops who were kind of like, do you guys got jurisdiction here? Hold on a second. This doesn't seem right. they form a line, in front of the crowd, too. Is like, you're not getting past us.
The reason I like that scene is because it's very much kind of like the scene in Spider-Man, the first one, right? The rainy Spider-Man, where Green Goblin's about to, go for the killing blow on Spider-Man, but like the city of New York came together to help Spider-Man out.
Yeah,
it's very cheesy, but it's also like I kind of like that though.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like Kamala more or less, like, everybody kind of like, well, I think most of them don't, like, obviously some of them know it's it's Kamala, but they generally just see like, yeah, she's like just trying to help people, all right?
Yeah,
calm down, stop being crazy.
Yeah,
trying to like do all these things. She's trying to protect us and stuff like that. Why you got to do that to a hero?
Yeah, the thing in why I never really bought. Some people will say it's cringy. It's kind of like awkward for scenes like that. I don't tend to see it as cringy or awkward because the idea is that this is a local hero saving people's lives, doing good for the community. You want them to, you want to protect them.
Yeah,
yeah, because they're protecting you. As the line goes in Spider-Man, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, granted, I feel like maybe Kamala needed to do a little more like hero saving in Jersey before they do that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice sentiment. I like those kind of stuff. Now, of course, everything's solved. Kamran is hanging out with Red Dagger Boy.
Yeah, he makes it out, like, and Kamala has a talk with her dad, because he's still trying to come up with a name, but he just tells her we call you Kamala because when you were born you were just so perfect, and, in our language, Kamala or whatever is like perfect, but in in Urdu, which is like what Pakistani people speak, it's like more like Marvel. And that's why
Marvelous,
that's why you're our little Miss Marvel. and it's like that's the name.
That's the name. I like that too.
Yeah,
that's such like a really nice way to tie everything in, right?
yeah, and I mean, obviously, she's also kind of just like, wait, you mean to tell me I was named after Carol Danvers? And it's like, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is, sweetie. I just know Big Hulk and Little Hulk.
Yeah. But yeah, now she's like, that's the name, and she's sort of just, just doing her thing, running around the city, being like, yeah, I'm Miss Marvel now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get sort of like one final scene before we get to the credits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a talk with Bruno. And
this is the one
friend.
that's going to have us talking a bit.
Yeah, because it is Bruno telling Kamala, like, hey, listen, all right, so I checked back on your genetic stuff. I think we might have been off. And she's like, why? And it's like, because your brother's been talking about, like, what does he have powers? Because,
Mm-hmm.
So we checked through it, and it's like, there's something off about your genetics. Like, there's almost like a mutation. And which, Kamala's like, all right, I mean, whatever it is, it's just going to be another label for me. I don't have to worry about it. And, they drive off. But obviously the implication and obviously the music that plays, if you
because
like...
I wasn't kidding when I did that sound bite.
Yeah, because, like, looking up the scene, like, they do the thing. Like, when you hear, when you're watching a Marvel property and they say the word mutation, like, even if there wasn't, like, the music thing, like, it's gonna light some light bulbs in some people's heads.
Yeah. Because
you don't just throw around the word mutation, lightly in a Marvel show.
No. You don't. It's even more so that with, like, that theme, because that theme is, like, just synonymous with
the X-Men.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like with, like, the Spider-Man is like,
yeah, like his classic theme,
Yeah, it's like they're both really iconic themes for,
those characters,
those specific characters. Mm-hmm. And with the X-Men theme, which was also introduced, thrown in at Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, when we got Professor X, they play a bit of like an orchestral, like toned down version of it when he's showing up. Mm-hmm. So, like, yeah, no, this is
especially since, like, the 90s X-Men was the one that really, like, hit it off.
Yeah, like, the 90s X-Men definitely, I think, was propelled the X-Men into, like, mainstream.
Yeah, because, like, X-Men during the Claremont era was great. Then the 90s came in with Jim Lee's art style to help push it. Yeah. But essentially, the big question is she a mutant now?
Yeah, because, I mean, we've had this discussion, like, from the first episode of, like, even before, like, the show came out, like, we had a discussion of, like, is she going to still be an Inhuman because of how her power set looks so different from the comics?
Are we just going to abandon the whole Inhumans idea?
Yeah, so now, I think I remember in the first episode, I was like, when she puts on the bangle, she gets that weird mist kind of thing coming around her, and I'm like, is that, like, are they still going to try to go Inhumans? And then we get the whole clandestine thing. But now it's like...
Well, not even just that, but there's also, like, very much a lot of, like, visual hints and, like ideas of Inhumans throughout the entire show. When they ever try to go to the clandestine. Into, their home, they essentially turn to stone and rot, right, from the inside.
Yeah, which, I mean...
It's a very Inhumans thing to do if you do not have the genetic makeup to be an Inhuman.
Yeah, because, like, if you're Inhuman, like, you turn into, like, stone, and then you emerge like a cocoon kind of thing when you get hit with the Targaryen mist. So, that's a bit of... Yeah, I won't lie. There's a lot of, like, Inhuman elements, or at least workings of, like, an Inhuman-style element. And to go, well, like, you gotta... there's something wrong with you. There's something different about your genes. It's like a mutation... Mm-hmm. It's like, wait,
So is she human or mutant?
Yeah. When I think that adds, like, a very interesting debate to it, like... And,
okay, so here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
What is an Inhuman if not a mutated person?
I mean, that is a logical thing, because, I mean, you're not wrong saying that.
The joke of the Inhumans was that they were basically discount X-Men, right?
Yeah, and we got to remember, like, before Marvel, the MCU had like the rights for the X-Men and stuff, like they were definitely pushing for Inhumans. Like if you remember like that Phase 3 like announcement video way back in the day,
Yeah.
or that press conference, they were gonna make an Inhumans movie, but then it turned into a show, and then that show bombed.
Yeah, the show bombed real fucking hard.
And they more or less pushed all the Inhuman stuff to Agents of Shield and whatever.
Well, that was early in the seasons too. I remember watching most of it, and essentially, the seasons 1, 2, and 3 were very Inhuman. Well, especially season 2, that one was very like into the idea of Inhumans, with symbol is Daisy Ridley. Daisy Johnson, one of the characters, was very much an Inhuman. She's Quake. They introduced a lot of other like Inhuman-like characters, but none of the actual main ones. You didn't get like Black Bolt, Medusa, what's the dog's name? Lockjaw. You don't get any of those guys in the show, but they're Inhuman because they go through the same Turn and Mist thing. So it's not that I think they're not gonna do Inhumans, but I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna put Inhumans and X-Men under the same umbrella, right? Because, like I said, what is an Inhuman if not a mutated person? Because they both have this sort of mutation happen to their body. Some of them are different from the others, obviously. With the X-Men, it's sort of more like happens once they hit a certain age. Puberty. That's growing up kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
With Inhumans, it's more you have to be exposed to a Terrigen Mist, and that's when you go through your whole cocoons thing and become a sort of mutated person, right? A superpowered person, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So for me, I think what's eventually going to happen is that they're gonna have X-Men and the mutants and Inhumans be under like a same umbrella term of mutation. They're gonna be their own separate things, but to make it easier, especially for like people who don't read comics and who have like a hard time wrapping around their heads on like the world of Marvel and other like comic stuff like that, it's much more easier to say they're kind of the same thing, just a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand why why that's your stance on that. I am more of a, I don't know, because the way I see it, like we already have, because in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, we do, the Illuminati, we have Black Bolt, and I believe they straight up just say he's an Inhuman, not explaining what the hell an Inhuman is. And then they have Professor X, and obviously we know he's an X-Men, he's a mutant. So like in terms of like the multiverse, like I don't, because I think I've seen some people being like, are they retconning just Inhumans out of the MCU, or are there no Inhumans or whatever? I don't think that. Like they're clearly gonna be, I feel like they're definitely gonna be a thing. It's more like probably they just don't know how to incorporate Inhumans very like in at this point, considering how like the show failed and like what parts they want to take from the show to retcon, or like just like I just like reset the button on Inhumans in terms of the MCU and just like, hey, there's Inhumans, we'll do a thing and set that up for something. I don't know, I because I think for me, I always kind of like figured like the main big difference with Inhumans and X-Men were that like anyone can become an Inhuman.
No, you have to have the not anyone can become an Inhuman. The idea is that you have to be, because Inhumans were people experimented by the Kree. So it's not that anyone can be Inhuman. You have to be like have sort of a Kree makeup in your DNA.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, I got hit by the Terrigen Mist, I get to become a human. No. You have to have like a certain genetic makeup for that.
Right.
Because the idea was that the Kree used Inhumans for like slave labor and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the Inhuman stuff came from. And obviously, like I said, mutant gene, tampered it with, ancient humans tampered and all that stuff.
Yeah, but my thing is that like okay, so clearly, just like it's more like different methods because it feels like most people have in the Marvel universe like most humans have like an X gene, but it's
Dormant.
dormant. Like for some people, it gets activated. Various different ways. Either
Yes.
sometimes they get born with it activated. Most of the time, it's through puberty and that stuff. But with the Terrigen Mist, I always it's like if you have like I guess the genetics, you get turned into a human. But if you don't, like you just like like you die, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I do think that they will at least attempt to like clearly have like different things. Although now that I think about it, because there is like another like a post credit scene that sets up the Marvels movie, where it's Kamala in her room, and then the Bangle does a thing that teleports her, and it switches places with her and Carol, where she's in the room, and she just goes, "Oh no."
Yeah, it's just like, oh no, I'm in the worst place I could ever imagine.
A fangirl's room. I gotta get out of here. I mean, granted, I don't think that's like her, like what she actually thinks, but it's kind of a funny reading when you think about it.
Oh yeah. I feel like that's like every like actor's. It's a very misery kind of thing.
Yeah, except you're the person who's a fan obsessed with you is a girl who looks up to you and stuff. Oh no! So
I mean, it would be pretty funny if Kamala just broke her Captain Marvel's sneeze. I'm just saying.
I mean,
Go
that'd be a way to
with a Stormbreaker.
Jesus Christ! All right, but more to the point, I think, just thinking about this right now, if the Inhumans are definitely Kree related, do you think? With the Marvels, because it does seem like Kamala's gonna get involved with some potential space shenanigans with Carol. Do you think, like because I mean the Kree can still be villains, right?
Yeah.
Like they definitely have the setup to still be villains in the show or whatever, or in the Marvel universe. Do you think like that might clear up Kamala? Like they find her, like, and they look at her and it's like, oh, I see some Kree stuff going on here, and then that's when the light bulb hits for everybody. It's like, oh, she's Inhuman.
I think that's their way into it. That's their way to say
that's like, yeah,
because let's face it, a lot of people don't like the idea of Kamala being a mutant.
Yeah, because I think it definitely robs. I've seen comments of that where like if people are saying like, oh, it robs her of like being a part of the Inhuman cast and just being put with a much more popular X-Men and mutants and stuff, which I mean, yeah, I can see that.
But this is a way for them to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, because like I don't know, because I feel like realistically that scene like because of like the sound, like the sound cue of the X-Men theme, it's like, oh, X-Men, but obviously like you said before, like you could also read it like if you didn't have that like musical cue there, you could be like Inhuman or mutant. Where's the question?
So that's why I feel like the musical cue is a red herring. Like it's meant to be, people will be like, oh, mutants, but then you realize, but they could use it as a way to explain no, but yes, right? Because like you can say like Kamala's family was tampered, is sort of a genetic tampering that caused it, and the only for the armband thing to awaken it, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like, you can also read right into it like, oh, but people have experimented on other life forms before. We weren't the first, and that's the cue for, oh, there are others with mutation.
I mean, yeah, like at the end of the day, I really I don't know. It's gonna be interesting how they handle all that. because it's very clear from Multiverse of Madness where I think they're willing to do both Inhumans and X-Men. It's more sort of like, how does that fit into the MCU? Because the Inhumans are more or less kind of there. Like, it's just how much of, like, that old television stuff they want to, like, keep canon. Because obviously they are willing to go into the TV stuff of Marvel to get canon stuff like Daredevil and, you know, all the rest.
And supposedly Jessica Jones is coming back in one of the 2 new shows they're coming out with, Echo or She-Hulk.
Yeah, so, like, clearly they're willing, like, they know that people like those shows and they're willing to take aspects of it to make it semi-canon, right? Because, like, those shows were, like, kind of canon, but not really, because at a certain point they stopped referencing the movies.
Yeah.
Or just their own thing. But, yeah, like, the Inhumans was definitely, like, the most, like, not related to the movies at all. So you could definitely... like take bits of it and try to like make it canon, but I don't know. It's definitely gonna be interesting how that whole works out.
Yeah.
Because again, like it just feels weird because like at first you think, oh, Kamala's just not gonna be an Inhuman at all. Hello, and then you get like hints of like maybe there's a bit of Inhuman elements that are still within her story, and then it's like, oh, she might just be a mutant. Because I mean, I don't know. I think the main issue is it's just how. We haven't gotten much of like how are we gonna incorporate mutants into the MCU besides like them doing like I guess a follow up to the old '90s X-Men on Disney Plus, like an animated show. But we still haven't gotten like a full on like explanation of like, well, not really like explanation, but more so like. We don't see much of a plan of where the mutants can slot in.
Or how to introduce them.
Yeah, because with the other property that, you know, they got from Fox, 20th Century Fox, Fantastic Four, we already know. Like, there's a movie.
It's going to be in the Phase 4.
Yeah, like, we got the movie lined up, so we already know, like, the timeline for when the Fantastic Four will show up. And I think it makes sense that probably the Fantastic Four have more of a leeway in, first of all, because their last movie definitely didn't work. And, you know, it's about, like...
I feel like at one point we had to talk about that movie.
You know, if we don't have anything else to talk about, we definitely talk about what the hell went wrong with Fan 4 Stick.
I mean, wasn't it like a talking point in a college seminar one time?
Yeah, because it was just like, this is where big budget movies can go wrong. Horribly wrong. But yeah, more to the point, you know, I think more people were excited to see a truly realized Fantastic Four within the MCU. And considering how long the X-Men movies have gone, like I think that's half the reason why we haven't seen much about that stuff for the MCU is because they wanted like a grace period of like let us like try to set up our version of X-Men to try to make sure it's at least different enough from the old X-Men. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting how that all turns out. But yeah.
Overall, Jay, what would you give this show?
I mean, I definitely went in thinking I was gonna like not really care much for it because of like what potentially might be the setup for it, right? I did like a fair amount of the show. But I think out of all the Marvel shows I've watched, this definitely has like the clearest like pacing issues, or like it has like the most most writing issue I've seen from a Marvel TV show, where like some like the pacing gets off a bit, and like there isn't like a whole focus, like there isn't like a concerned focus of like making either of the villains of the season compelling enough to be like, you know, fun to watch or whatever. I mean, Kamala, I like her character enough. Like she has a solid like, you know, growth throughout the show. And while I do, you know, like I like what they did with, I guess, with like all the cultural elements and stuff, but at the end of the day, I think like needs to have a solid story, like to work through, and it kind of falls a bit towards the end, and that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I for me, I would, the show's pretty all right by the end,
Mm-hmm.
like it just kind of goes from like, oh, this is a fun watch, and then it's like, yeah, okay, well, I guess that ended about as well as it could have ended.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. Because the thing about Miss Marvel that I feel like a lot of people really enjoyed was the aspect of culture. I think it's one of those things where rarely do you find like a show or a property that is heavily, inspired by or is based on a culture that isn't really talked about as much. But they did it in a way where, one, it was very engaging, and two, was very normal, right? Like, you don't see oftentimes with these kind of things, like, oh yeah, this is how you would do this story, or the experience of a Middle Eastern family. I think that's what really like got people really interested in, and it's one of the highlights I've seen a lot of people talk about. One of the highlights I really enjoyed. The superhero aspect was fine at the beginning, but the problem for me was, and I think it's because the shows aren't written to be shows, right? Like I was talking about earlier, we've never heard any inklings of a potential season 1 or season 2 of any of the shows. They're just gonna be straight up, a limited series. But these aren't written to be sort of like limited series,
Mm-hmm.
They're not given enough time to develop, and they're not given enough time to like fix any of the problems that they have. Now, I don't know what's going on at the studio over there, but they need to do something about this really good, really fast, because it's you have the makings of good quality, and you're not using it to your full potential. Maybe because they're out there, pumping so much that it's starting to hurt themselves. But it whatever it may be, I'm not sure. I feel like they really do, need to focus on one, constructing a well written story, because like the first 2 episodes were fantastic. Some of the best stuff I've seen out of Marvel. I was like, oh my god, this is like different, right? Third episode was like, oh man, this is good. I'm in this. I'll see where it's going. Fourth episode, the cracks are showing. Fifth episodes, oh my god, the water's coming in, the boat's sinking. And this episode is very much like, okay, we were able to save the boat, but there's still a lot of water in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully they utilize more of Kamala, and I hope like really they come up with more things to do. I mean, look at Mandalorian. That was written to be a show.
Yeah.
But these don't feel like they're written to be shows, and I think that's kind of like the thing about it, because like none of these shows have been talked about as much as, say, something like Mandalorian, unless it was meant to be just a limited series, like say WandaVision. Because I think that out of all of them, that Mandalorian and WandaVision were the most talked about.
I mean, yeah, I definitely understand that. Like, it definitely seems like like a lot of the Disney Plus Marvel like shows are like more or less kind of like extended movies.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of like how they definitely how a lot of them are paced.
Yeah.
But I definitely do think like if you wanted to make it like just a standalone like because I think like even if you wanted to make it like a standalone like series, like I feel like there's a better way of pacing it out well.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just having it be like feel like a bit of a protracted like movie. Because I mean Loki,
that felt like a show.
Yeah, and especially because now, like, obviously they're gonna make a season 2 of it and stuff. So I don't know. I find it interesting that like, that there's a potential of just like them just like making a series and waiting for like it all to finish out, and then like potentially deciding, okay, let's make a season 2 out of it if it looks good or whatever, or if it had like the viewership numbers or whatever. Which I don't know. I just find that to be kind of odd.
Yeah. No, I agree. But overall, I feel like Miss Marvel is just a solid show, just a good, like I would say, a 7 out of 10, which is kind of sad because this show started off with so much promise. You know?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that rating.
Yeah. So I mean, it's sad, but the show, I still recommend the show, especially if you are looking for a more diverse property involving superheroes. Go with this. I think it's one of the more, aside from like the issues that we've had, it's probably the most different thing that Marvel's come out with, and they utilize that in such a great way, but by not only talking about a group of people that rarely is talked about or like shown to be just you know treating them like people kind of stuff. It's one of those things where I feel like it's a show for that reason. Hopefully, if it does get a season 2, we get more of this cool stuff, more of the family, more of this stuff. It's we'll see. But now let's talk about Thor: Love and Thunder. Okay, so Taika Waititi's second Thor film, the fourth film in overall in the Thor movies.
It's the only one out of the main, like I guess, Avengers to get like a 4.
Yeah,
Like we've gotten a fourth movie because so that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I thought it was a very good movie.
I thought it was a good movie too. So we're gonna give our 1 minute review. By the way, this will be spoilers for each of us, and we're gonna talk about. Then from there, we're gonna talk about, further our thoughts onto those. So Joey, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so Thor: Love and Thunder, I really liked. I was already a fan of Ragnarok, and this movie definitely gives me a lot more of Ragnarok, which I think could be good, could be bad for some people, depending on whether they have to like the direction of Ragnarok. But I really liked the story. I liked our villain. Gore was Christian Bale was very solid. I also like the interactions of Jane and Thor, like getting to see sort of a resolution of their character arcs, considering just kind of like where that whole storyline went throughout the MCU. But overall, yeah, I thought the comedy was solid. I thought it was just a very solid entry into the Marvel universe, and it still leaves the door open for a lot of Thor adventures to come. So yeah, I really like this movie, and I really liked all the visuals as well.
All right, so this I guess is my turn. So as my friend brother here said, Thor: Love and Thunder is more or less if you like Ragnarok, you might like this. There may be a bit of a structure issue, but overall, I feel like they got to say what they needed to say, and got through what they wanted to say. Especially when it comes to adapting the Thor to God Butcher arc of Thor's long story. Christian Bale is a standout. I kind of do wish that there was more with him, but he was used effectively, and you kind of understand why he was doing what he's doing. The relationship between Thor and Jane is a highlight, and especially considering with the situation that Jane is going with, and sort of seeing how that is all resolved. Overall, I feel like this is a very good movie. It might not be the best Marvel movie, but I think that's fine. I think I think it's probably one of the better ones that they recently came out with.
All right, but yeah, to go off what I think ended off, like I think a lot of the visuals in the movie are like really good, like just the colors of certain scenes and how it laid out.
I will say though, there are moments where the visuals are a little lacking, There's one scene in particular that I was like, this needed a better touch up. I think it's one that's been making the rounds. And while I feel like a lot of people are quick to bash, I also want to say, like, listen, people have even worked hard. You kind of have to give them a break.
Yeah, I will. I will agree there. I think that's probably the only scene I can think of where it's a little that the effect looked a little off. But besides that, I felt like a good chunk of the scene, especially when they're in the Shadow Realm planet, where just everything turns black and white.
Oh no, that was amazing.
That looked fantastic. Like straight up. Like I think that's one of the best visual segments of the movie, and heck, it's just one of the best segments of the movie in general.
It's also like interestingly shot in terms of fight choreography.
Yeah, like just so much contrast to the colors, and then like you get like you got colors that are kind of like the reds and blues are like there, but they're very faint. But yeah, it's a very solid visual, like the very solid like colors and visuals, and like you could take a lot of screenshots of those scenes and just have them be like wallpaper stuff, you know? Like it's just so striking visually.
No, I agree. I feel like if you weren't a fan of the community, because there's been kind of a discourse with how Taika has done Thor, right? And that some people feel like it's not the serious Thor, it's not like the Thor I like. I don't like the idea of this being the Thor that we're getting now. And while I totally understand that, like, I mean, there's some people that say like, man, that guy who did the Northman should have done a Thor movie. Like, he knows this Viking shit, this whole stuff, you know. But at the same time, like, having read some Thor stuff and having looked into, like, just knowing comics, right? It's all a difference in interpretation. They kind of deal with whatever. Some are more serious, some are more comedic, some are more lighthearted and fun. So, seeing that in a movie format doesn't really bother me. Because, like, yeah, sure, it's fine. That's cool. It doesn't really... Because, like, Thor can be a bit of a goofball, even in the comics. But, you know, no one wants to say that. But also, just the fact that a lot of people just weren't resonating with serious Thor.
Yeah, because that's the thing I feel like people kind of forget. Like, the first Thor movie was alright, but then you get the second one. Like, we've seen, like, you know, that sort of interpretation of Thor just being the very, like, super serious, like, guy. And, yeah, like, you know, like, I still think that Thor 2 is probably the worst Marvel movie. You know, just because of just like how off it is, and like it definitely just more or less just set up for Infinity Stones, and like it exhibits a lot of the problems that a lot of people say the Marvel movies have. You know?
Yeah.
Like that movie is definitely like, yeah, like it's definitely one of those like, okay, yeah, that's definitely it's a textbook example of what Marvel movies are like criticized for, and you know I think they did a good enough job to like at least with the other Thor movies to like at least stay away from like those kind of tropes. I mean, granted, yeah, they definitely jump into the comedy more, but it's more like for like the aspect of how absurd all this is when you think about it.
Yeah. And the comedy is just really well done too, because like there's just moments where like I just couldn't stop laughing. Like there's a moment with the Guardians, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, Thor, help us, but he's just sitting there just contemplating.
Yeah, he's just doing his meditation stuff, and it's like, Thor, we need your, you know, we need you, all right?
Yeah. Though I will say there are moments where I felt like the movie was a little too goofy. You know? But it wasn't like... But thankfully it wasn't... Those goofy moments weren't there for long. Like, I've seen someone say, this is like the Batman and Robin of the Marvel movies. I'm like, no.
God, that's a take. Because honestly, like when you say something's the Batman or Robin or something, I think you're by your definition, you're like saying that it's like the worst thing ever. When it's like, I mean, first of all, I don't think that's even remotely true for this Thor movie. I don't think it's the worst like Marvel movie we've gotten at all. I think like I guess you're trying to compare in terms of campiness.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I feel like I don't get that like sort of thing because like I feel like with the Batman and Robin, it definitely is a bit campy and like a bit of like parody and stuff. Like obviously you get like dumb stuff of like certain lines. Like obviously Mr. Freeze is just as much as I love Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie because I find it very hilarious. Like I can understand people just being like, "Oh, so many ice puns. I don't like it. Bat credit card. It's so dumb." And yet,
yeah, it's also one of the things that like people use to the origins, basically the origin of his like wife stuff.
Yeah, like it still has like elements of that stuff. Like it has the elements of like like him being like an evil villain because he's trying to save his wife and stuff. But more to the point, I feel like when they say that, what I'm hearing from that take is that they think that this Thor movie is just making fun of itself and being,
which I disagree. Yeah, no, I also disagree because like there's some serious moments. Granted, there's some moments that I feel like maybe didn't need a joke there, but like no, when it's serious, it's serious.
Yeah, like Jane's whole arc in this movie is that she has cancer, and Mjolnir more or less calls out to her, and she gets to like at least be a bit healthy by wielding Mjolnir because somewhat of a spoiler, they do a whole like flashback of Thor and Jane's time together, and he does like more or less what Odin did with his hammer, where it's like whoever is worthy will wield the power of Thor, and he's like, "Listen, Mjolnir, Jane's all right, she's great, but I want you to protect her no matter what." And it causes a little sting, which is probably like the explanation, like one of the explanations of why Mjolnir is able to do what it does with Jane. So that's I mean it's an interesting thing.
It's done out of comedy, but it's also just to show how much Jane means to him. Because, like, he would do... Like, he really loved this person, but they just happen to go through some, like, breakups. Because, like, it's one of those things where it's never really talked about. And it's kind of slightly talked about in this movie. Just, like, being in a relationship with a superhero can kind of suck.
Yeah, because, he's Thor. He has to go out and save the 9 realms, Asgard, all this stuff. And even, part-time with the Avengers, like, he's very busy, and she's also super busy because she wants to like continue her role and like all her science stuff, and it just leads to a sort of like a head, where they're just sort of constantly they get to a point where they're just bickering about stuff, where it's like, "You're never here for me," like the title is definitely there. It's like it's about Thor having to like reconcile that. Yeah, I made mistakes in my relationships. Especially with Jane, and I need to rectify that, because it's all about him like stop pushing people away from him, like at least romantically, and try to like find something.
Especially since at the beginning of the movie, it's giving you the implication of like, one, dude's been around. It's just been like,
I mean, he's been alive for like thousands of years.
Yeah, and this is the first time he's ever felt like actual like an emotional attachment to someone. Like, that's why when Korg's telling his little narrative speech, it's like, yeah, there was something different about this one.
Yeah.
This one felt real.
Yeah.
And, like, it really, we as evident in, like, Endgame, he was really hurt.
Yeah.
That it happened. And this is where we get to explore that, right? And it wasn't like both of them being, like, just, like, assholes.
No, it just, out of just circumstance, it just sort of fell apart for them.
Yeah, it's one of those romantic comedy movies where like, why didn't these two get together? Oh, it's their life just went in a different reaction, but they still have feeling for each other, and it helps that Valkyrie is such like a wingman.
Yeah, because honestly, I'm gonna be honest. When I heard like what like Taika was saying about like Valkyrie's character, it's like, oh, she's looking for someone to rule Asgard with, such and such, because she is like confirmed, I think at least bi, right?
Yes.
So in my brain, I thought, oh, are they gonna set up a thing where like Jane and Valkyrie are gonna get together to just sort of like, but no, she's like a total wingman. She's like, oh, okay, I see
So I
what's
feel like
going
some
on
people
here.
might have a problem with that, but they've also just talked about how essentially, you know, she herself, you know, is going through her own stuff with love.
Yeah, because she had like a partner within the Valkyrie, stuff, and she definitely, there is a scene where she sort of just like kind of like has a moment of like, yeah, I'm still working through that, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
But she still has time to flirt around.
Yeah, she does. She definitely does flirt around
Yeah.
with at least some people.
Yeah, but it's like there's a difference between like flirting and like being in a relationship though.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of the I don't know. Like that's why I think like a take like, oh, this is the Batman and Robin of the Marvel movies. It's like you're being hyperbolic.
Mm-hmm.
That's like such a hyperbolic take. Like this movie has, I think, a lot more emotional weight than Batman and Robin. When Batman and Robin was clearly just a lot of it just for camp, and they do have like elements of like uh of just like like, oh, this is like emotionally interesting, like with Mr. Freeze's wife stuff, but they don't focus on a lot of that stuff because most of that movie is just sort of just like kind of a bunch of dumb stuff. But I feel like with Love and Thunder, like you get a lot of elements. Obviously, Gore's whole thing of like worshiping a god, losing his kid, and like finally meeting that god and being like, I was a devout follower for you, like please like help us. And it's like, screw you, I don't care for you. You just have to be, the follower. That's it. It's a classic. Like I'm pretty sure there's like a Bible story about this.
Mm,
There's like it's a classic story of like a person being devoted to like a god, and then finding out God's kind of an asshole.
it's Job,
Yeah,
the story of Job. But in that one, he maintains his faith though.
yeah,
The whole thing is like God is just throws everything but the kitchen sink on him. It's because like the idea is that he wants to see how devoted he is,
yeah.
and he is rewarded for his devotion, even though like a lot of shit that he threw at him were really fucked up.
Yeah, and in this case, it's like Gore's like, no, I had it. No, like this is, I've lost my child, I've lost everything,
I lost my home.
and it turns out the gods are just kind of assholes.
Yeah,
Screw the gods.
even more so because like when you go into like where they go into like the home, I wouldn't say the home, but like the place where all the gods are at, and they're all led by Zeus, and Zeus is like, yeah, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah, like
he's basically like saying like, oh yeah, we don't give a fuck.
yeah, because like there's a whole plot line where like, hey, we need the gods' help to help stop the God Butcher, and like Zeus is like, that's an Asgardian problem. That's not our problem. We don't have to worry about it. And then obviously like he actually is like, yeah, no, he has the Necro sword which can kill gods, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
Plus he's sort of, I don't Point is, he's not a problem.
Yeah, no, he's
now like let's all have an orgy.
yeah, like he's just very full of himself and like kind of like neglecting the problems of like the world, like something that kind of makes Thor different, right? Because that was always the point, is that Thor is kind of different from most of the gods, and later on we'll find out another character, like he's willing to be there and help, and be a hero to these people.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in the God Butcher story, Gore, he stopped believing in God at some point when like all the prayers just nothing helped, and then when he stumbled upon two gods fighting, and that's when he realized, oh, there are gods, but they don't care about the little people, and it's essentially becomes like that kind of confrontation between him and Thor. It's like like a god fighting like the ultimate like nepotistic asshole.
Yeah.
Well, there is the same same thing here. I do feel like there isn't enough for Gore to be real, not to be evil. I think the justification is there, but not enough for us to see Gore be more of a threat to the gods. It's more like vignettes, really.
Yeah, it's just like various like bits of him just going around killing random gods.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, no, I still think he's definitely like
Oh no,
probably.
he's used like very well. He is like very terrifying. Like there's a moment where I'm like, oh bro, you need to calm the fuck down. These are some kids.
Yeah, no, he's. I think he's probably definitely one of the better Marvel villains we got, just because one, his motivations are completely make sense for his character. You know, especially considering what we see of like other gods, like you know when they're in like sort of like the dimension, like the city where all like where a bunch of gods reside, like Zeus and stuff, and they're all just kind of assholes, and it's like, yeah, you know what, Gore probably is right a little bit. The gods are dicks.
Yeah, and it helps, and you know it's just kind of justify like what makes Thor so different. Like he is someone who, you know, found love in humans. That makes him different from everyone else. So obviously that's why he does the things that he does, and I the big thing that I felt that the issue that about this movie that I talked about with other people is that the runtime is too short. It's less than 2 hours. Like, or it's like it's barely reaching 2 hours.
Uh huh.
So, and I feel like a lot of time could have been, going into like more of the gore stuff. Because apparently there was a deleted scene where he would have killed Peter Dinklage's character, and it's implied that's where he got the information about how to do the thing with Eternity. Which, by the way, Eternity shows up, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of a neat visual with Eternity. But yeah, I definitely understand that where like people were saying. I think that's been a thing too because the Doctor Strange movie was like only 2 hours as well.
And you know that they could have used a couple more minutes.
Or yeah, there's probably definitely a couple scenes for that movie as well. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting note because obviously, like before, I think the Phase 4 movies. Well, I'm not saying I haven't done the research into how long Phase 4 movies have been compared to like other movies, but Marvel movies have not shied away from getting to 2 hours and 30, which is like a general like
a standard, really.
Yeah, for like a lot of these big budget like blockbuster movies, you know. But in this case, I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I think like maybe like a couple of scenes, like one or two extra scenes to flesh out some things, probably would have been better. But I think I was more or less fine with how long the movie was.
Yeah.
Like, cause for me it was pretty sort of more or less kind of standard. Like I felt like the pacing was generally fine. I do think there are some elements that definitely do seem a little bit kind of rushed at some points. But I overall thought at least the pacing was fine enough.
But it's one of those things where and like I'm not saying it should be better or any of that stuff, but like it's clearly like could have been used more time to flesh stuff out. And I know a lot of people tend to having that issue where it's like, man, the pacing is a little weird, this and that. But I do agree that with you that I feel like the movie in itself isn't as terrible as most people feel it is, but it just like really goes on like where you feel like the comedy goes, and it's not even just the comedy, it's just like the way a lot of it is like balanced, right? Because there are moments where I'm like, I feel like this is a little too. Even I feel like this there didn't need to be a joke here, but when the emotion, but it's also I don't think it's like meant to be comedic, but it's like slightly meant, because there's a scene where Thor is talking to Jane, and he's trying to convince her not to use the hammer anymore, and there's a moment where one of the Asgardians is like, yeah, we can't do anything about this. It's a little late. I'm sorry. And like he's just angry, and we don't see him like breaking anything, right? If it's like it's kind of funny, but it's, and a lot of people feel like, oh, that didn't need to be funny. And while I agree, but I also argue that it's just shot funny, because it's like it's kind of like tells you how much like he's upset. It's just like the only thing he can react to is like he's gotta smash something
Yeah,
because he can't save the person he loves.
I mean, yeah, it's and I know what the scene you're talking about. It's him and like it's a shot of like him and then he looks at like a vending machine and just all you hear is like the vending machine being destroyed and then you just see him walking into the room just being like, yeah, I just got some snacks from this drawer. It just wouldn't open. Like I get why some people would say like that didn't need to be funny or whatever. I think I think I agree with you where it's like it has a comedic tone, but there's definitely like a hint of like this is his only way of reacting to the news he's gotten to just take it out on like an inanimate object and like try to cover up the fact that he's angry or he's upset.
It's a very human thing to do.
I mean, yeah, like just to do a thing and then be like, I'm not upset. What are you talking about? I'm definitely not upset.
No.
You know? So there's definitely a comedic like undertone to it, but I also think like like you can clearly tell like Thor is upset and he's trying his best to hide it, and that's where the comedy comes from. Yeah. I'm guessing for some people, where it's like, oh, look, like he's clearly upset about this, about hearing that. Yeah, no, Jane, if she uses the hammer again, she will suffer, and he doesn't want that, and he's trying his best not to hide that emotion because he doesn't want to, show that emotion.
But also, like, just there's also the scene where her and Valkyrie are talking about like what's this doing to her, and like she kind of diverts it to being like, oh, speaker, haha.
Oh yeah, just yeah.
That one was a little off, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I feel like there's still some comedy bits that really work. I mean, you and I have talked about the Stormbreaker joke. Where whenever Thor is like looking at Stormbreaker in a certain way,
no, because he's looking at Mjolnir back and he's trying to like see like can I get back here, and then so it's always like him bringing Stormbreaker to him. It's like, oh hey buddy, how you doing? It's like there's a running joke of like not it's his ex being with his ex hammer, and he's like, no, you're cool Stormbreaker, like you're great,
Yeah, it's like oh no, I'm not into her, anymore. Kind of stuff. A sort of way for him to be like, trying to hide the fact that he's still,
One has feeling for Jane, but also two is like, can I still use Mjolnir? Hold on a second here.
Yeah, it's a double meaning there.
Yeah.
But also just the fact that a lot of people were like, why would the hammer these hammers have emotions? Well, technically in Norse mythology they all have there's some sort of sentience even in the comics. Like, I think Jane even talks to Mjolnir at one point in the comics. And I think recently Thor fought the spirit that was inside the Mjolnir. It's a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of stuff. Just comic book logic. But yeah, no. To sum up my thoughts on the movie, I think it's one of their. I don't think it's the best one. But it's certainly one that I really enjoyed, just as I enjoyed Ragnarok. If I were to give it a rating right now, I'll probably give it like an 8 out of 10. I don't know about you, Joey. You like Taika stuff no matter what.
I mean, yeah, I like him as a director, and I like a lot of the things he does. I do like his kind of comedy. I would probably give it about an 8.5 because I do agree there are elements that I do think definitely could have probably had a bit more work into it. Like I kind of really probably wanted more of like Christian Bale and gore and that stuff. And obviously I there's a lot of other elements. I think just like maybe fleshing out some character bits for some characters. Give it like not like obviously I don't think it needed to be like super long or whatever, but like maybe like 215, 220.
Yeah.
Like just some extra scenes and like development for some other things, but I still enjoyed the movie very well. But yeah, like like there's only like maybe like two post credit there's two credit scenes. I mean, one I was really excited about because of, like we're bringing Zeus in, and there is another Marvel character that is based off of a mythological Greek figure
Mm-hmm.
that has way more presence than Zeus does in those comics. And it's your boy Hercules.
Hercules.
Being like after a bunch of shenanigans that happen, at the omnipotent city or whatever.
Yeah.
Zeus is like, I want
his head.
I want Thor. Yeah. Hercules, my son, go after him.
I'm like, sure thing, Dad.
Yeah, and that's gonna be kind of interesting for me.
Yeah. Also, Jane goes to Valhalla, which I kind of like. It's a nice cap into her story.
Yeah, I mean it's and we see Heimdall as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's super kind of neat to see that happen with her. Like, and we do get like a little teaser text of like Thor will return.
Yeah.
So that is something that I don't like. It is interesting because it's like, which Thor though? Because does Jane still have will she come back from Valhalla to like do like a little thing?
Yeah.
Or will we see more Thor adventures with good old Chris Hemsworth?
Yeah.
Because I think he has said like he's willing to do more Thor movies with Taika because he really likes working with him.
Yeah. And I'm totally down for those. It might upset some people because I know some people prefer serious Thor, but if these guys want to work together, man, let them work together, whether it be on Thor or something else.
Yeah, like it's definitely. I think it's definitely going to be interesting considering out of all the original Avengers, it seems like Thor definitely has a lot more stuff they could do with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is just because they're leaning more into like the cosmic aspect with him and like all the space Avengers he can get into.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, overall, I thought Love and Thunder was a solid entry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised that like this movie has gotten a bit of mixed reactions in terms of like with the fans.
It's mostly been positive, but I feel like a lot of people who are really tired of Marvel movies now really see that as the poster child of like how tired they are.
Yeah, I guess I think I get what you mean.
Yeah, because I think that's another aspect of it being kind of related and kind of where one time it was compared to like what's the movie I'm thinking Batman and Robin, because that was like that was the point where like, okay, I've had enough of these Batman movies, we need a break,
Well, I feel like when it came to like those Batman movies, those early ones, like people liked the first one with Michael Keaton. Then Batman Returns, it was like, yeah, let's let Tim Burton, let's have more free reign. And then it's like, oh god, what have you done? We can't sell Happy Meal toys with this. This is, oh no,
Penguin bites someone's nose off.
Yeah, all the sexual tension with Catwoman. Oh God, get someone else.
What's his name?
Joel Schumacher.
And then he went just full on camp.
Batman Forever made money. People liked it, and then it's like we went too far with Batman and Robin. Bat nipples, and there's a lot of
Bad credit card.
There's a lot of things about those movies. And it also caused like I think a ripple effect of one, people not like wanting that much camp and like setting Batman movies back, but also two, now every Batman movie since Batman and Robin has to be super dark and gritty and realistic.
And no Robin.
Definitely no more Robin.
God damn it, give me my Tim Drake.
Just do Damian Wayne, I find it sad that like we haven't gotten a live action Robin, and then the Batman the Lego Batman movie comes out and does a perfect like.
I wouldn't say perfect.
Well, I mean, I think it does a well enough job of introducing a Robin and getting all that stuff to work out.
Yeah, like a Robin that isn't like Robin, but I get what you're saying. Like at least acknowledging a Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's always like the thing with I think those Batman movies, and I think this is the last thing we'll say before we head out. Is just like I think people like it when Batman just dark and brooding and doesn't really have much like fun, because at a certain point, like with Robin, like that's when like Batman gets a bit more fun.
Mm-hmm.
He lightens up. he's no longer like
Edge boy.
because he has more or less a son now. And they don't want to do that with they don't want to give Batman that character development in any movies. They want him to just constantly being this dark and broody dude who just punches people.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, like it's a slightly less interesting way of his character, But overall, Love and Thunder, I liked it a lot.
I liked it.
This has been a very long episode, I feel.
Yeah, it's time to end it. Anyways, guys, it's been me, your boy Eli.
Me, Joe.
Be sure to follow us on all social. I almost forgot the thing. Follow us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Most active on Instagram. Linktree to all the podcasts that we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. Link to the YouTube, where you'll find the YouTube video for this. Like, comment, subscribe, support us on Patreon. But yeah, that's it, guys. Have a good one. Peace.